Dust swirled around Hope Springs, a town as quiet as its name suggested. Sarah, with her sun-kissed hair and eyes the color of the summer sky, was the preacher's daughter. She knew every hymn, every Bible verse, and every expectation placed upon her. Her life was a tapestry woven with church socials, piano lessons, and the comforting, predictable sermons of her father, Reverend Elijah. Elijah was a good man, his heart filled with unwavering faith. He loved Sarah deeply, but his strict adherence to Scripture sometimes felt like a cage to her. She yearned for something more than the endless cycle of small-town life. She dreamed of faraway places, of adventures beyond the dusty horizon. Their small home, nestled beside the church, was a haven of peace. But even peace could feel stifling. Sarah often found herself gazing at the mountains in the distance, imagining what lay beyond their peaks. Little did she know, adventure, though not the kind she dreamed of, was about to come crashing into her life, carried on the back of a dying outlaw. The storm arrived with the setting sun, a furious wind howling through the streets of Hope Springs. Sarah hurried home from choir practice, clutching her shawl tightly. As she rounded the corner near the church, she saw him, a figure sprawled on the ground, half hidden in the shadows. He was a mess of blood and dust, his clothes torn, a bullet wound staining his side crimson. Fear warred with compassion in Sarah's heart. She knew she should call for her father, but something in the man's desperate eyes held her back. "Help!" he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Gold, hidden vengeance." Sarah knelt beside him, ignoring the mud and the blood. "What gold? Who are you?" He coughed, a fleck of blood hitting her cheek. "Jebediah, Cain's gang betrayed." His grip tightened on her arm. "Mountains west of here for revenge." His eyes fluttered closed. Sarah shook him gently. "Jebediah, tell me more." But Jebediah was gone. The only sound was the wind and the rain beginning to fall, washing away the dust and the blood, but not the outlaw's dying words echoing in Sarah's mind. Gold, hidden, vengeance. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving a glistening sheen on everything. The body was gone, taken away by the undertaker. Sarah told her father she'd found a lost traveler, nothing more. But Jebediah's words haunted her. Gold, hidden, vengeance. She spent the day in a daze, going through the motions of her usual routine. But her mind raced. Should she tell someone about the gold? The sheriff? Her father? But the thought of leaving it for someone else, someone who might use it for their own selfish gain, gnawed at her. That night, sleep evaded her. She tossed and turned, the outlaw's last words echoing in her head. She pictured the gold, imagining what she could do with it. Help the town. Escape Hope Springs. Finally, around dawn, she made a decision. She wouldn't tell anyone. She would find the gold herself. The next morning, she packed a small bag, telling her father she was going to visit her aunt. He looked at her with a hint of suspicion, but didn't press. As she rode away from Hope Springs, heading west towards the mountains, Sarah knew her life would never be the same. The preacher's daughter was gone, and something new, something far more dangerous, was taking her place. The mountains were unforgiving, the terrain rough and unfamiliar. Sarah, used to the gentle hills around Hope Springs, found herself constantly challenged. She relied on Jebediah's vague directions. West of here, near the Twin Peaks, look for the old oak with the broken branch. Days blurred into a cycle of writing, searching, and praying she hadn't made a terrible mistake. Her conscience pricked at her. Was this what her father would want? Was she truly helping anyone, or just chasing a selfish dream? She thought of the town, the struggling farmers, the sick children who couldn't afford medicine. Maybe the gold could change things. Maybe it could bring real good to Hope Springs, a good that her father's sermons couldn't provide. Finally, after a week of relentless searching, she found it. The Twin Peaks loomed in the distance and nestled between them. An ancient oak stood sentinel, its branch broken and hanging like a skeletal arm. Beneath it, concealed by a pile of rocks, was a heavy wooden chest. Sarah's heart pounded as she pried it open. Inside, glittering in the dim light, was the gold. More gold than she had ever imagined existed. It was real, and it was hers. The weight of the gold felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Sarah spent the night huddled near the fire, watching the flames dance and contemplating her next move. She knew she couldn't just return to Hope Springs with a chest full of gold. Questions would be asked, suspicions raised. She thought about her father, his honest face, his unwavering belief in doing what was right. The guilt gnawed at her, but she pushed it down. She told herself it wasn't about greed, it was about opportunity, about finally taking control of her life. She decided to take a small amount of the gold to a larger town, sell it discreetly, and use the money to help Hope Springs anonymously. She imagined buying medicine for little Timmy, whose cough had been plaguing him for months, repairing the roof of the church, which leaked every time it rained. But as she planned, a new thought crept in her mind. What if she kept a little more? Just enough to start a new life for herself? A life free from the constraints of Hope Springs. A life where she could finally pursue her dreams. The line between helping others and helping herself began to blur. The gold was a powerful temptation, and Sarah was finding it harder and harder to resist. The thrill of having it outweighed the guilt. Sarah rode into the bustling town of Redemption, a place far removed from the quiet piety of Hope Springs. She sold a few gold coins to a shady merchant, enough to fill a small pouch with cash. The transaction felt dirty, illicit, but the thought of what she could do with the money spurred her on. She sent an anonymous letter to Doc Miller in Hope Springs, along with enough money to buy medicine for Timmy and several other sick children. She also arranged for a discreet payment to Farmer Johnson, saving his farm from foreclosure. Seeing the good she could do, even from afar, solidified her belief that she was doing the right thing, even if the means were questionable. But the experience also changed her. She saw the hunger in the merchant's eyes, the desperation in the faces of the people in Redemption. She realized that money was power, and she had it in abundance. She bought herself a new dress, a stylish hat, and a small pistol. She was no longer just Sarah, the preacher's daughter. She was becoming someone else, someone bolder, someone more dangerous. The ends justified the means. For now. But how long would that last? Redemption wasn't big enough for her ambitions. Sarah, or rather, the woman she was becoming, needed a bigger stage. She packed her belongings, leaving behind any trace of her former life. She was no longer Sarah, the preacher's daughter. She was Sal. She arrived in Gulch, a sprawling, lawless town teeming with gamblers, outlaws, and opportunity. Sal quickly assessed the landscape, recognizing that charm and cunning were more valuable than any sermon here. She started small, winning poker games with a sly smile and an uncanny ability to read people. Soon, she was running her own saloon, the Golden Nugget, a place where fortunes were made and lost, and secrets were traded like currency. Sal was a natural. She knew how to handle the rough clientele, how to negotiate deals, and how to stay one step ahead of the law. She had a way with words, a disarming smile, and a ruthless streak that kept her rivals in check. She attracted a loyal following, men and women who admired her strength, her wit, and her willingness to take risks. But she also made enemies, men who resented her success, who saw her as a threat to their own power. Sal was building an empire, but she knew that empires were built on blood and secrets, and she was ready to pay the price. Sal's reputation in Gulch grew with each passing day. She was a master manipulator, able to orchestrate elaborate schemes that benefited her while leaving her rivals in the dust. One example, a rival saloon owner tried to undercut her prices. Sal responded by spreading rumors that his whiskey was tainted, then quietly bought up his supply at a fraction of its worth and sold it for a massive profit, cementing her dominance. She was also fiercely protective of her people. When a group of bandits tried to shake down one of her bartenders, Sal personally confronted them, her pistol gleaming in the dim light. Her charm melted away, replaced by a cold, calculating ruthlessness that sent the bandits scurrying. Her loyal followers like Big Joe, a hulking bouncer with a gentle heart, and Rosie, a quick-witted card sharp, would do anything for her. They admired her strength, her sharp mind, and her unwavering loyalty to those who stood by her. But her ruthlessness also created powerful enemies. Men like Snake Eye Sam, a notorious gunslinger who felt slighted by Sal's success and vowed to take her down. Sal knew that her past was catching up with her, and that the life she had built was built on a foundation of secrets and lies. It was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. News travels fast, even to quiet towns like Hope Springs. A traveling salesman, fresh from Dust Gulch, regaled the townsfolk with tales of a charismatic saloon owner named Sal, a woman who was as cunning as she was beautiful. Reverend Elijah, listening intently, felt a chill run down his spine. The description, it sounded like Sarah. He dismissed the thought at first, but the unease lingered. He hadn't heard from Sarah since she supposedly went to visit her aunt. He wrote her letters, filled with love and concern, but they went unanswered. Finally, driven by a father's intuition, he decided to investigate. He traveled to Redemption, then to Dust Gulch, asking questions, showing Sarah's picture to anyone who would look. The reactions were telling. Some recognized her, their eyes widening with surprise. Others simply shook their heads, claiming they'd never seen her before. Finally, he found someone who knew Sal, a grizzled old prospector who chuckled and said, "Sal, she's a force to be reckoned with, but she ain't the kind of woman you'd want your daughter hanging around with." Elijah's heart sank. He went to the Golden Nugget, his Bible clutched tightly in his hand. He had to see for himself. He had to know if the woman called Sal was truly his Sarah, lost to a world of sin and temptation. The moral conflict tore at him. He loved his daughter, but he couldn't condone her choices. He had to try to save her soul. Meanwhile, far from Dust Gulch, a storm was brewing of a different kind. Cain, Jebediah's ruthless lieutenant, had been searching for the gold for months. Jebediah's betrayal had cost them dearly, and the gold was their only hope of rebuilding their gang and exacting revenge. Cain was a man of few words and even fewer scruples. His face was scarred, his eyes cold and calculating. He inspired fear and loyalty in equal measure. He had tracked Jebediah to Hope Springs, but the trail had gone cold. Until now. A whisper in a saloon, a drunken boast from a traveler. The name Sal and the town Dust Gulch were enough. Cain knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that Sal had the gold, and he was coming to take it back. He gathered his remaining gang members, a motley crew of hardened criminals, each as ruthless as himself, and set off for Dust Gulch. They were driven by greed, vengeance, and a desperate need to survive. They were a force of nature, a storm of violence ready to descend upon Sal and her empire. Sal may have been building a new life, but her past was about to catch up with her in the most brutal way imaginable. The race for the gold was about to begin again. Cain and his gang arrived in Dust Gulch like a pack of wolves descending on a lamb. They moved through the town with an air of menace, their eyes scanning every face, their hands never far from their guns. It didn't take them long to find the Golden Nugget. Cain strode into the saloon, his gaze locking onto Sal. The music stopped, the chatter died down. Everyone sensed the danger in the air. "Sal," Cain said, his voice a low growl. "We need to talk." Sal, ever composed, raised an eyebrow. "About what, mister?" "Cain," he replied. "About Jebediah and the gold." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sal motioned for Cain to follow her to her office. Once inside, she closed the door and turned to face him. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied, but Cain wasn't fooled. "Don't play coy with me, Sal," he sneered. "Jebediah was one of us. He stole from us. That gold was meant to rebuild our gang, to avenge our fallen brothers. Jebediah was going to use the gold to buy weapons and strike back against the men who betrayed us. That gold is ours, and we're here to take it back." Sal studied Cain's face, recognizing the desperation in his eyes. She knew that this wasn't just about gold. It was about survival, about loyalty, about revenge, and she was caught in the middle. Sal knew she couldn't reason with Cain. He was a man driven by desperation and revenge. She had to buy herself some time. "All right, Cain," she said, her voice steady. The gold is here, but it's not going anywhere without a fight. Cain smirked. I expected nothing less. Before Cain could react, Sal blew out the lamp, plunging the office into darkness. She knew the layout of the saloon better than anyone. She slipped out a back door and signaled to Big Joe and Rosie, who were already mobilizing her loyal followers. A fierce gunfight erupted in the Golden Nugget. Sal's people, though outnumbered, were fiercely loyal and knew how to defend their territory. Sal used her cunning, setting traps and ambushes, leading Cain's gang on a wild goose chase through the saloon. They managed to drive Cain and his gang out of the saloon, but not without casualties. Several of her people were wounded, and the saloon was a mess. As she surveyed the damage, Sal realized the true cost of her choices. This wasn't just about gold anymore. It was about survival, about protecting the people she cared about the blood that was now on her hands. She was no longer just a saloon owner. She was a target, and she had to decide what she was willing to do to protect what was hers. The game had changed. Just as Sal was tending to the wounded, Reverend Elijah walked through the doors of the Golden Nugget, his face a mask of sorrow and disappointment. He looked around at the chaos, the broken furniture, the bloodstains, and his gaze finally settled on Sal. Sarah, he said, his voice trembling. What have you done? Sal's heart sank. She knew this moment was inevitable, but she wasn't prepared for the pain in her father's eyes. Father, she said softly, I can explain. Explain? Explain how you become a saloon owner, surrounded by outlaws and violence. Explain how you've abandoned everything I taught you. I did what I had to do to survive. Sal retorted, her voice rising. I used the gold to help people, to build a better life for myself. The gold that was stolen, the gold that belongs to others. Elijah countered, his voice filled with righteous anger. You've strayed from the path, Sarah. You need to repent. Repent. Sal scoffed. This is my life now, Father. I'm not the innocent girl you once knew. I'm Sal, and I'm not going to apologize for protecting what's mine. Their clash was a direct collision between two worlds, two vastly different moral codes. Elijah couldn't understand Sal's new reality, her need to survive in a lawless world. And Sal couldn't go back to Their argument was interrupted by the sound of gunfire. Cain and his remaining gang members had returned, determined to take the gold by force. Get down, Father, Sal shouted, pushing him behind the bar. The final showdown had begun. Sal, Big Joe, Rosie, and the rest of her loyal followers stood side by side, ready to defend the Golden Nugget and their way of life. Reverend Elijah, despite his reservations, grabbed a shotgun from behind the bar, his face set with grim determination. He may not have approved of Sal's choices, but she was still his daughter, and he wasn't going to let her face this danger alone. Cain and his gang stormed the saloon, firing wildly. The air filled with the smell of gunpowder and the screams of the wounded. It was a chaotic, brutal battle, a clash of wills, morality, and gunfire. Sal moved with a deadly grace, her pistol blazing. Big Joe used his size and strength to protect the others, while Rosie's quick thinking saved them from several ambushes. Even Reverend Elijah, despite his lack of experience, proved to be a surprisingly good shot. But Cain was relentless. He was determined to get the gold, no matter the cost. The battle raged on, with both sides taking heavy losses. Sal knew that it was only a matter of time before one of them fell. The fate of Dust Gulch, and perhaps even her own soul, hung in the balance. The battle culminated in a final showdown between Sal and Cain. They faced each other amidst the wreckage of the Golden Nugget, their guns drawn. It's over, Sal, Cain snarled. Give me the gold, and maybe I'll let you live. Never, Sal replied, her eyes blazing with defiance. This gold isn't yours. It's mine, and I'm going to use it to build a better future. Before Cain could react, Reverend Elijah stepped forward, placing himself between them. Enough, he shouted. This violence has to end. Cain hesitated, momentarily taken aback. But then his face hardened. Get out of the way, preacher, he growled. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me deeply, Elijah said, his voice filled with conviction. I won't let you destroy my daughter's soul." In that moment, Sal made her choice. She realized that she couldn't continue down this path of violence and corruption. She had to find a way to redeem herself, to honor her father's values, while still protecting the people she cared about. She lowered her gun. "Cain," she said, "take the gold. It's not worth all this bloodshed." Cain, stunned by her surrender, hesitated. But then his greed overcame him. He grabbed the gold and turned to leave. But as he did, Snake Eyes Sam, seeing his opportunity, shot Cain in the back, killing him instantly. The remaining gang members scattered, fleeing into the night. Sal looked at her father, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Father," she said. "I've made so many mistakes." Elijah embraced her,